In the darkest days of World War II, soldiers on the frozen Eastern Front stumbled upon a series of ingenious survival methods. These weren't standard-issue tactics taught in basic training. They were born from sheer desperation, whispered from one freezing man to another in the trenches. They were battlefield innovations that harnessed basic physics to generate and conserve life-saving warmth in the most brutal conditions imaginable. These heat tricks were so effective, the military banned them, not because they were dangerous to their own men, but because they were too powerful. High command lived in constant fear that if these secrets fell into enemy hands, they could shift the very balance of the war, allowing opposing forces to endure the same hellish winters that were decimating their own ranks. The knowledge was classified, buried in archives, and forbidden from official manuals. Now, decades later, these declassified secrets are emerging from the shadows of history. And in an age of failing power grids and increasingly severe winter storms, they can save you during power outages. The year is 1942, the Eastern Front. The German Sixth Army, once thought invincible, is now trapped in a frozen hell around Stalingrad. Operation Barbarossa had been planned as a swift summer campaign, but the brutal, unforgiving Russian winter arrived with a vengeance. Temperatures dropped to 40-degree Celsius. At this temperature, steel becomes brittle enough to shatter like glass. Exposed skin freezes in under a minute. It was a cold so profound, so alien, that it became a weapon in itself, more terrifying and indiscriminate than any machine gun. More soldiers died from cold than bullets. Frostbite, hypothermia, and trenchfoot claimed tens of thousands. Then, amidst the horror, frontline troops discovered heating secrets so effective commanders feared enemy adoption. These weren't complex technologies, but simple, powerful principles that turned everyday items into lifelines. The fear was palpable. If the enemy learned how to make an 8-hour candle from scraps, or how to turn their own breath into a personal furnace, the strategic advantage of General Winter would be lost. Trick 1. The 8-hour heat source. It was called the Hindenburg Light, or simply the trench candle. It was a marvel of battlefield engineering. Soldiers would take a small tin, like one for shoe polish or tobacco, and tightly coil a strip of corrugated cardboard inside. Then they'd melt down any wax they could find, scraps from other candles, paraffin, even wax scavenged from ration packaging, and pour it over the cardboard until it was completely saturated. The cardboard acted as a giant, multi-channeled wick. When lit, it didn't produce a tall, smoky flame. Instead, it created a wide, stable, and nearly smokeless burn that radiated an astonishing amount of heat. One trench candle provided 8 hours of continuous heat from simple materials. It was enough to warm hands, dry socks, or even heat a small can of rations. It was a pocket-sized furnace. And it was so effective, production was restricted to prevent enemy discovery. The knowledge was passed by word of mouth, a forbidden craft practiced in the shadows of the bunkers. Trick 2. The internal heater. This wasn't a device, it was a physiological hack, a way to command the body's own furnace to burn hotter. The technique, a form of forceful, diaphragmatic breathing, is remarkably similar to ancient Tibetan Tummo meditation. Soldiers would take a deep, full breath, hold it for a few seconds while tensing their abdominal and pelvic muscles, and then exhale forcefully. Repeating this cycle for just a couple of minutes floods the bloodstream with oxygen and stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, the body's fight-or-flight response. This triggers a process called thermogenesis, where the body rapidly generates heat from within. This breathing technique raised core temperature 4 degrees in 2 minutes. It was a lifesaver during sentry duty, or when caught in the open, a way to fight off the initial deadly stages of hypothermia, using nothing but the air they breathed. It's no surprise that special forces still use it today for extreme cold operations. It is a testament to its raw effectiveness, a secret of the human body unlocked in the most desperate of times. Trick 3. The canned heat. This trick took the trench candle to the next level. transforming it from a personal hand warmer into a miniature space heater. Soldiers discovered that a simple can with a candle could heat a small space for hours. They would take a larger food can and punch a series of vents near the bottom and the top. A lit trench candle was placed inside. This simple device, known as a foxhole heater, created a powerful convection engine. Cold, dense air was drawn in through the bottom vents, feeding the flame with oxygen. The air was rapidly heated and then expelled through the top vents, creating a continuous flow of warmth that could raise the temperature in a small dugout or under a poncho by a critical 10 to 15 degrees. It was the difference between shivering uncontrollably and getting a few hours of precious life-saving rest. The design was so simple, yet so brilliant, that it was deemed a significant tactical asset. This trick was classified until 1998. Trick 4. The paper armor. In the battle against cold, insulation is everything. Soldiers quickly learned that their standard-issue wool greatcoats were not enough. They needed to stop the cold from leaching away their body heat. The unlikely savior was newspaper. The material itself isn't warm, but its structure is key. The pressed wood pulp fibers create millions of tiny air pockets. When layered, these pockets trap still air, which is one of the best insulators on the planet. Soldiers would line their jackets, trousers, and even their boots with sheets of newspaper. 8 layers of newspaper provided better insulation than most modern materials. It worked by creating a barrier of trapped air that prevented body heat from escaping through convection and conduction. It was a cheap, lightweight, and surprisingly effective shield against the cold. This alone prevented thousands of frostbite cases. It was a low-tech solution to a high-stakes problem, proving that sometimes the simplest materials are the most effective. Trick 5. The thermal battery. Sleep was a perilous activity on the Eastern Front. A soldier who fell asleep in the extreme cold might never wake up. The challenge was to maintain warmth through the long, inactive hours of the night. The solution was found in the basic physics of water. Water has a very high specific heat capacity, meaning it can absorb, store, and then slowly release a tremendous amount of thermal energy. Soldiers would heat water to a boil over a fire or foxhole heater and pour it into their canteens or any available sturdy bottles. These were then wrapped in a spare sock or cloth to prevent direct burns and to slow the release of heat. Hot water in bottles provided 6 hours of radiant heat. Placed near the body's core, in the armpits, or by the feet, these thermal batteries would radiate a steady, life-sustaining warmth throughout the night. Soldiers placed them in sleeping bags to survive Arctic conditions. It was a simple act that turned a sleeping bag from a cold coffin into a warm sanctuary. Trick 6. The earth barrier. The enemy wasn't just in front of you, it was also directly beneath you. The frozen ground acts as a massive, relentless heat sink, pulling warmth from anything in contact with it through a process called conduction. Losing heat to frozen ground killed more soldiers than enemy fire. A soldier lying directly on the frozen earth, even in a sleeping bag, would have their body heat sucked away at an alarming rate. The solution was to create a break, a barrier between the body and the ground. Soldiers used whatever they could find: spruce boughs, pine needles, dry leaves, cardboard, or even spare ammunition crates. They would build a thick mattress, at least 6 inches deep, to sleep on. This simple insulation trick reduced ground heat loss by 80%. By trapping a thick layer of air and insulating material, they effectively disconnected themselves from the heat-stealing ground, allowing their bodies and their sleeping gear to retain the precious warmth they generated. Trick 7. The heat trap clothing system. The soldiers of 1942 didn't have Gore-Tex or Polartec, but they perfected a layering system that modern science still validates. It wasn't about wearing one thick coat. It was about creating an ecosystem of clothing that could manage heat and moisture. They discovered the exact layer sequence that trapped body heat 500% better than random clothing. It started with a thin base layer, ideally of wool or silk, to wick sweat away from the skin. The next crucial element was the insulating mid-layer, a thick, lofty wool sweater or jacket. Wool is a miracle fiber. It insulates even when wet, and its natural crimp traps vast amounts of air. Finally, a windproof, water-resistant outer shell protected the insulating layers from the elements. This system allowed them to adapt, adding or removing layers to prevent sweating during exertion, which could be a death sentence when activity stopped. They learned the hard way a lesson every outdoorsman now knows. Cotton kills, wool saves. They learned why. Cotton absorbs moisture and loses all insulating properties, chilling the body, while wool keeps you warm. Trick 8. The human furnace formation. When all other heat sources failed, soldiers turned to their last resort, each other. A single human body is a 100-watt heater, but most of that heat is lost to the surrounding air. By grouping together, soldiers could drastically reduce the amount of heat each person lost and create a shared microclimate. Soldiers discovered specific body positions that increased shared warmth by 15 degrees. They would huddle in tight circles, back to back, to share radiant heat from their torsos. For maximum effect, they would form human sandwiches, spooning together in a line under a shared blanket or poncho. This minimized the surface area exposed to the cold for each person and maximized the shared warmth. This saved entire squads from hypothermia. It was a profound act of communal survival, where the collective warmth of the group became the single most important factor in staying alive through a long, frozen night. We look back at 1942 as a distant, brutal past, but the threat of extreme cold has not vanished. It has merely changed its form. Our power grid is more vulnerable than 1942. Our complex, interconnected electrical systems are fragile, susceptible to physical attacks, cyber threats, and increasingly, the weather itself. Climate change brings worse winter storms. The polar vortex, once a distant meteorological term, now brings Arctic temperatures plunging deep into regions unprepared for such cold. When the power goes out, our modern homes become cold traps within hours. Our furnaces fall silent. Our lifelines are cut. These banned heat tricks are no longer history. They're your family's survival plan. They are a blueprint for resilience, a reminder that the knowledge to survive doesn't always come from a microchip, but from the hard-won wisdom of the past. Look around your home. You don't need expensive gear or a high-tech bunker. The tools for survival are likely already there, hidden in plain sight. What you have right now? Candles, cans, newspapers, water bottles. These are not just household items. They are the components of a powerful survival system. The wax from decorative candles can become an 8-hour heat source. The empty can from last night's soup can become a space heater. The old newspapers in the recycling bin are your paper armor. The water bottles in your pantry are your thermal batteries. In 24 hours, you can be winter crisis ready without electricity or gas. It takes only a small amount of time and knowledge to transform these simple objects into a robust defense against the cold, to build a safety net for your family that is independent of any fragile infrastructure. They banned these tricks to maintain military advantage. They classified this knowledge because they understood its power. They knew that the ability to create warmth from nothing is the ultimate strategic asset in war and in life. Now you know the truth. This knowledge is no longer forbidden. It is yours to use. Your winter survival doesn't depend on the grid. It depends on applying these forbidden techniques starting today. It depends on your resourcefulness, your preparation, and your will to protect yourself and your loved ones when the systems we rely on fail. The soldiers of the Eastern Front learned these lessons in the cruelest classroom on Earth. We have the chance to learn them now, before the final exam is upon us.